Hello. I guess this would be politics at home with Holmes.
Yep.
This is our politics segment. Today we have Miss Kerry George from the ABC party. And before we go into what the heck is an ABC party,
Mhm.
I'd like to get a brief overview or an in-depth overview, however she's willing to give us, about what and who she is and why she got involved. So, hi, Kerry. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Well, I have been running a business in Calgary for many years, and my business started out in person and local, doing a lot of events. I work with business owners and entrepreneurs. And over the last 15 years or so, I've taken the business online and global. But today, I still do a lot of business in Calgary. I'm still very active in Calgary. And the reason I got involved in politics was because I have been watching stuff happen in the community for many years, such as, the downtown core of Calgary emptying out. There was over a 40% vacancy rate in commercial property by 2019. Introductions of bike lanes everywhere. This kind of got my interest up of what was going on politically downtown. And then, of course, I think the tipping point for me to really get involved was after our last civic election when Gondek came out the very next day and said that she was all about climate emergency. And for me, that's not a huge problem because I do believe that you should look after the environment. I think that that's a good idea. But what I was upset about was that this was not something that she ran on. And now suddenly this was going to be a major part of her, what she was bringing to the table. And I
Right.
just felt like it was bait and switch. I felt ripped off as a Calgarian because my new mayor was not interested in actually looking after our city. She was interested in a global concern that was outside of the scope of what she had the ability to have any impact with. So that was kind of a tipping point for me.
Hmm.
And then I began to become very involved in, finding out like how can we remove a mayor like this? When there was the recall Gondek thing, there was a variety of other things that happened over the next couple of years, but I wasn't alone in this. There were many people also that were angry about her declaration of climate emergency and how that was going to take precedence over the needs of this city. And so a group of us started getting together and having, meetings and discussing like, what could be done? Like, shouldn't our mayor and then our councilors, take an interest in what's happening in our city? And we were watching as well 8 councilors that were voting with her on every issue after issue after issue, which was another thing that made me angry. It was like, wait a minute, where's the democracy in this? And how come these councilors aren't concerned about what the people in their wards want? So that was the driving force for myself and for many people. And fast forward to today, where we're seeing increase in taxes and a variety of other issues happening. The city is upset, really, really mad. And that has been the staging ground for municipal parties. So that's kind of what got me involved. And I know for many people that I've been, working with over the last couple of years, it's gotten them pretty involved as well.
Yeah, as far as I know, and when people, because one of my other questions is like, why was it felt necessary? But you said between watching all of the counselors and Jody Gondek, start polling the climate agenda that wasn't on the platform. And then another thing, since me and MayCee are on Ward 14 for the ABC party, people kept saying it was the rezoning bylaw. So how is that for you?
Well, many Calgarians are upset about the blanket rezoning. So it wasn't even rezoning. I mean, people weren't against some rezoning. What they were against was this blanket rezoning, that it's really beyond the control of the citizens of the wards to have any decisions in the process, right? That's what they were against. And they were coming down to City Hall. And I mean, we had 735 people made the trip to City Hall over like 3 weeks. And then 2000 and I think it was like 300 and some said no again online. And then they patiently listened to everybody come down and talk. And then the next day told us, your opinions don't matter. We know better. We're going to do it anyway. And again, this has just heightened the frustrations of Calgarians, because People are upset. If you've purchased a property that was, in a housing community, you want the value of your home to be able to be maintained. And all of a sudden there is, a 30 unit duplex, or not duplex, 30 unit complex going up next to you,
Mhm.
and knocking out the sun and the view. And you're like, what? I didn't buy a house here for that. People are
Right.
upset about this, and there's other ways of doing it. The blanket rezoning was not necessary.
Yeah, I remember me and Maddie actually wrote down speeches and then we tried to give our public testimony to them as well. And mine was actually mainly because I listened on like a line to all of the people giving their testimonies because I was like, I don't know what this is necessarily because I'm young. And so it's just getting right into what is the dynamics of a municipality and what do they deal with. And then when this came up, there were so many amazing people that came in, like contractors, real estate agents. So many people were like, hey, like, here's all of the information as to why this is a terrible idea. And it was so cool to listen to that. And that was what like my speech was primarily about. I was like, this, like, we need to, like, we should be listening to the people. This is like a huge roundtable right now of, and these are people that are engaged, like they're active. And that is like, I just thought that was so cool. So but I think that that's like one of the main things that I think tipped me off and introduced me to what ABC was.
Well,
Yeah,
and
ABC was coming out about that time as being, an alternative, the
yeah.
municipal party, but we had already been at it for close to 2 years because we saw right from the beginning of Gondek's platform that something was amiss. And in fact, I even noticed it prior to the election when the big billboards were going up across the city. I've tried to
Mm.
purchase those for my company. I've looked into the pricing of them. They run at $20,000 a month to 100 grand a month, depending on their positioning and their size. So when you're seeing a new candidate for mayor, all of a sudden on dozens of these across the city, you know that there are millions of dollars going in to support her campaign.
Mm.
And what we have since discovered is that that was union money taken off the backs of union workers, often without their permission,
Mm.
and put into the political system. And that has brought us Gondek, and that brought us Nenshi, which is why there's been this thread of kind of unity of the same kinds of concepts from one to the next. And that is about to bring us the next mayor if we don't do something about it. We already know that Brian Thiessen has hired the same campaign manager who brought
Mm.
the union money. That is Stephen Carter. He hired
Mm.
him and brought him to the table. So guess what we're in for next? That's coming straight at us like a freight train if we do not do something about it now.
I think that leads beautifully into the next question then, which would be like, what is the ABC party then? What is this solution that you guys have posed? And even to add on top of what you just said, it's like these guys are backed by union money. So how would we back up these potential candidates that we'd like to get in as well?
That's a great question. So when we first started having discussions, the concept of having a party came up because parties can be more organized. They can raise money better. They can get bigger money behind the party. So a lot of it has to do with the financial piece. It also has to do with the accountability piece because the reason we were being sideswiped here by an agenda that was not presented during the campaign was that because the mayor and the councillors don't have to come out and say that I believe in, for example, I'm right or right of center, or I'm left or left of center. They don't have to say anything about what they believe because, they're representing themselves as being independent, but they
Mm.
do have beliefs that they're carrying with them, as we saw with Gondek and Nancy. Now Nancy is like the leader of the NDP, so clearly was left all along, but was
Mm.
acting like, no, no, I'm here to represent you in Calgary. So we just thought there should be a way that people can tell, and if you want to vote left or right, good for you. I mean, you should vote whatever it is that, however your heart is directing you, but you should know what you're voting for before you
Mm.
go to the polls. And the way it was before, we did not know. So having a party start is really, really good for that accountability. Also, having a party means that we bring people together with some aligned values. So we do some vetting. In a better Calgary party, we also wanted to stop the vote splitting. So in the last election, for example, I believe there were 29 people who ran for mayor. And besides Jody Gondek, who obviously won, there were 3 or 4 pretty good candidates that were kind of right of center. Of course, they weren't identifying themselves as right of center, but they were splitting the vote, is what was happening. And each one of them raised like $1 million. Well, what if they all ran together first in a party? And then we picked the best one by voting. And then we ran that one candidate and put $4 million behind the one instead of each of them trying to win with $1 million, $1.5 million against somebody who's been funded by unions to the tune of like $4 million or more. What if we did that? So that's the plan. That is the idea behind a Better Calgary Party. We wanted to also be democratic. So we are not choosing, our leaders or choosing the people who are running in the wards. They're stepping up. The wards are bringing them to us. And if we have 2 or 3 candidates in a ward, we have an internal election first. So you have to be a member in order to vote in the internal election. And then the person who wins is the one that is supported financially and the one that is supported with all of the resources of a Better Calgary Party.
Right. So for anyone who doesn't know, in Calgary, we have 14 wards and it's numbered 1 to 14. I just found out from an ABC, a Better Calgary Party candidate, actually my Ward 14 candidate, that in Edmonton, they have a weird names for them. So it's a lot harder to remember. Whereas in Calgary, we have the 14. And what's interesting is that me and MayCee, when we first politically got involved, it was with provincial politics, not municipal, which is the city of Calgary. So we were on and are on our Calgary Fish Creek Constituency Association. So when the ABC party started and they were talking about ward associations, me and MayCee were like, oh, that's interesting, because we didn't know how, getting involved in the provincial, we didn't know what a constituency was, let alone how many there were. And now vice versa, break it down more locally. Now we're in municipal and we have 14 wards. And each ward has their own association where that's where plebs like us can get on as if you would your provincial board. And then so those candidates, that's where we get to vet them ahead of time, like a nomination vote, and then that dictates who runs for councillor.
Yeah, it's very, very democratic. I mean, you have to win the favor of the people before the party backs you, which is a big difference between the other parties that are coming out, because they're not parties, they're slates. You see, if I say I want to run, I'm going to be the mayor, and I'm going to pick 4 of my buddies, and they're going to be councillor on, Ward 5 and 6 and 10 and whatever they are, right? And we picked each other. That's a slate. That's not a democratic process involved in that at all. Nobody voted for us to be the leaders of this party. We put up a website. Now we convince people come and, join us. It's all, if there is the democratic process at the end where they vote, but the reality is to put ourselves into that position, we just picked ourselves. At a Better Calgary party here, that's not how this works. You are picked by the people. If you put yourself forward, you still have to get voted for by the people. There's a whole democratic process. We have some principles that you have to adhere to. And then we also have bylaws, because we're a real party and we're going to be around for a long time. So that's going to be another difference between us and the slates, is the day after the election, the slates are dead. They're not a thing anymore, because they'll have to put together a new slate for the next time. Also, typically slates don't win. They just can't raise the same kind of money. They don't have the same organization. They never did the work in the back end, to get things like the principles and the bylaws and stuff like that in order.
Speaking of principles, this is the A Better Calgary ABC Party's website. You have the principles right on the first page. Now, these principles, why are they significant? Do each candidate that we nominate have to follow them? Could you speak to these?
Yes, we vet our candidates and we put them through a vetting process, but this is one core piece, is that they agree with the principles. The principles are very simple. They're not, we don't want to make that so it's so tight that they can't move within the side of each one of these sentences, okay? Because each candidate has to have the ability to represent their wards, and they may have slightly different interpretations within their wards of, how this is going to be played out. But we want to make sure that, these things are important to them, that the priority on municipal priorities and essential services. Okay, really important. Our essential services have been ignored. Okay, we're talking decades of ignoring our essential services, which is why we had water pipes break last summer. It's why
Right.
we, yeah, and we're looking at infrastructures like roads and potholes and all of the different things that make a city a city. There has been no auditing of any of these services in the city of
Mm.
Calgary for decades. Okay,
Right, because
so
if you're not taking care of the essential services, but we're still paying the money, where's the money going? Right, I see.
right? And why does taxes keep having to go up when you haven't done an audit?
Right.
How do you know what might be left in the system for money if there's been no audit or what? You ever watched I would think it was Batman where the guy is down below in the basement and 30 years later he's still running this department that's now defunct. How much of that do we have going on at City Hall and in the city of the running of the city? It's just never been called to account, right?
That's funny. That plays right into the second principle of balancing fiscal responsibility.
And with compassion, because I think one of the things that comes out by the fear-mongering left is they say, well, the conservative type movement is just going to slash and burn. They're going to get rid of everything, and it's going to hurt people, right? That's the argument. But the reality is that we need to have fiscal responsibility, but we also have to have compassion. You got to look at, well, how will it affect people if we do this, right? But it's up to the counselors to make those decisions and to have the freedom to do so.
Right.
Yeah. So
So
prioritizing the interests of Calgarians, that should be obvious, but it wasn't with Gondik.
Mm.
yeah, well, I mean, clearly the rezoning, because for anybody who doesn't know, we had it was it was a historical precedence in Calgary because it was the largest city council
Public hearing.
public hearing in Calgary's history for people that's went, and majority being also a part of it, that disagreed with doing the blanket rezoning. So that was the Calgary historical precedence, and it got completely walked over. So
This is just
prioritizing
one
the interest of
small piece.
Calgary's.
When you're looking at what's happening in Calgary, Jody Gondik she's joined worldwide forums on climate emergency stuff. Okay, she's been traveling and on our dime all over the world to go and represent herself, basically to line herself up for a great job, most likely after this is all over. And then after that, she's also had conferences that we put on in the city of Calgary and flown in employees and flown in representatives on our dime. Okay. So all of this is going on, and is that in the best interest of Calgarians?
Mm-hmm. Well,
That's
yeah,
not even
then
a Calgary agenda.
yeah, and then it sounds like she hasn't been very transparent, accountable.
No, and as soon as you call her into account on anything, it's just a lot of gaslighting, and I was listening to her just the other day as she is being asked questions about accountability, and she's just like, just changes the topic and goes on about something else. So no, that hasn't been happening. And ensuring municipal issues are decided at the most local level possible. I mean, that's important because
Yeah,
sometimes something that's important to Ward 8 in the downtown area, that may not be as high a priority to Ward 14, right? That's on the
right,
southern tip of the city,
right.
right? So the ward counselors need to have some ability to have these discussions within their wards and to have some power to do something.
Yeah, well, that's the nice thing about for since me and MayCee are on our CA board for the provincial political parties, we get you get access to your MLA. So it's like that's literally 1 degree of contact. So and one of the principles that's on here is that citizens actively participating in their democracy, which you've said so many times, Kerry, already, is just that democratic process is something clearly the ABC party values, or else we
It's true.
wouldn't.
Every one of our wards has an association, and people can step up and be part of that. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm always a little bit like I'm just questioning when people say, well, I don't feel like I have any part of the process. Well, come on down and take part in the process. You're invited to
Right.
do so, right? Well, I don't agree with all of the things that you represent. How do you know? Come on down.
I think
You
the
know,
for
ask
people
questions.
for people
Mm,
who do that, my brain just kind of goes like, we've just explained that this party is meant for literally your electing who you want to represent you. So if someone doesn't join ABC and decides to like step up as candidate and that makes you upset because you're like, oh, like I would have preferred someone who's like this, it's like, well, then encourage them. Be like if you're friends with somebody who's like that, who shares similar values, when you guys are chatting around the dinner table and you like what they have to say, then it's like, hey, you know what you should do? Maybe you should run for a candidate, and then I would totally vote for you. It's like this is supposed to be a door opening for those who want to actually get to the table.
mm.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Defending the rights and freedoms of Calgarians, of course, that should be obvious. Supporting a family is a fundamental unit of society. I get asked questions about this, and I don't know why, because I wonder if people can read. I mean, we want to support the fundamental unit of the family. How hard is that? And I think they're
Honestly.
looking for an argument about what we say a family is or something, but you
Mm,
determine that. You live in the ward and you're a human and you have rights and freedoms. We just want to support you as a family. Okay.
mm,
That's honestly
And
a
we want our
very
candidates to, yeah, I want the candidates can come and say what they want to do as far as policies are concerned. But, we do believe that the family needs support. And of course, we're going to promote the vibrant entrepreneurial spirit that built Calgary. We have a lot of business owners are part of
mhm.
the kind of the founding unit that brought this together. And that is really what makes a city function well is the ability to do business and because the small business owners actually employ more people than large business owners do, but they need support. And of course, in the downtown core, particularly in Calgary, we have not been getting a lot of support from the city for years. And so it's kind of neat that so many entrepreneurs have stepped up and said, you know what, this needs to end, and we need to find a way to have a voice at the table because it's not just about big developers. Okay, they
No,
will always
yeah.
find a way to have a spot at the table because they're talking about large tracts of land and lots of money. But what about the little guy? What about the mom and pop shop on the corner, right? That has like 4 employees.
mm.
Those are important as well. And so we just want to be able to give a voice to people for democracy.
Yeah, even my clan, we're not originally from Alberta. Me and MayCee are, but we're the first of our generation. When both my parents came here, they said the thing that really stuck out about Alberta was the industrial, entrepreneurial attitude of the Albertans. Everybody is hardworking, and there's so many entrepreneurs in Alberta. And I was at another event the other day, and there was a lady who came from Montreal, and she said the exact same thing. She said every person I meet, they have like their own little mom pa local business, and that's just not common across Canada because she's been to every province. So that's something that really stuck out, and that's really nice for the ABC party to recognize that about Calgary and its unique um, culture that way, because that is a cultural difference between Calgary, Albertans, and then other provinces in Canada.
Yeah, we even had the CBC come out recently and did some interviewing of our folks. And one of the comments afterwards was the atmosphere and how people were getting along in our pub nights, and how even brand new people were just immediately welcomed into the fold and sat down, at a
Mm.
table and introduced to others. And that's this community that we're putting together. A large part of it's entrepreneurs, but there's just people. People are interested right now in politics. They're passionate. They want to know how they can step up and take part in something and make a difference in this city.
Okay, well that comes to one of my other questions because Kerry, if I'm not mistaken, now are you VP of communications? Like, what's your role within the ABC party?
I am. I'm the VP of Communications. I have about 30 years experience in communications, meaning that I have been running businesses. A lot of it's been running businesses, although I've done marketing for other businesses as well in the past. That used to be a company that I had. but I've been following social media, and well, I had 5,000 friends on Facebook pretty much the year Facebook came out.
Okay, so with that being said, then what is the ABC strategy to, you're saying that people are excited, and I believe that because being involved, me, my whole family in the provincial politics, even the AGMs for the past like 3 years have been record breaking for Canadian history, not even just Albertan history. So I do believe that people are wanting to get more politically involved, which we can show later about how somebody can find their ward. If you don't know what your ward is, what number you are, you can go to the official Calgary website, and I'll show people how to do that. You can put in your address, and then it'll pull it up. So it'll give you your ward and then your counselor, and you can go from there. But regarding your strategy as VP of comms, how are you appealing to millennials or youth? I know they don't like door knocking like the old fashioned people do. So how are you getting people that aren't, how are you getting candidates? Is that a problem? Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, we haven't had a problem getting candidates. We got lots of people stepping up, and there's several. In some wards, we have 4 or 5 people that are going to run against each other. In other wards, we have just one. But there's been lots of interest. As far as the strategy in comms, I can't give you the whole strategy. But I can give you a few tips. What we have been doing is we did a lot of research in the history of successful parties and successful movements, and we're applying some of those, strategies to the party. We have a kind of a multi-layer approach because you're right, the older folks do like door knocking, and so the answer is yes, you need to do something if you're a candidate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the younger folks like social media. Well, we do have some experience in that regard, and we know how to drive the numbers on social media, so that's not a problem. Younger candidates also like younger faces, so we are right now looking for a couple of younger faces that we can use as people to put in front of the media and stuff like that, and bring forth more younger people. And we're looking also at creating a youth movement within the party so that we can draw more youth into what we're doing. But those are strategies. They're happening, but there's a lot of other stuff that happens in comms. I mean, comms is also about emailing. It's about texting. It's about getting the message out to the current members and speaking the language that they understand. And also people want to be part of a cause. They also don't want it to be a drag. It can't be tiring, and it's got to be kind of fun, because otherwise people get tired really quickly, right? So there's a lot that goes into this, a lot of things that are discussed behind the scenes, and then all of it kind of works together. I mean, there's phone calling. Yeah, people still make phone calls, and all of this stuff still goes together. So the answer isn't do we do this or do we do that? It's yes, 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 and yes. We do all.
That makes perfect sense.
I just wanted to come back on 2 things, and I had questions on, which was you already addressed it a bit in the sense that like this party is supposed to be more for election, but what is the other party that people are getting confused about with, I believe, Dan McLean and such, that is more of a selection type of process? Because just so that way we can, because so many people are like, are they together? Are they not together? And just so we can get some clarification on that.
Well, you know what? It is a confusing thing that's happening right now. We're called a Better Calgary Party. Okay. There's another party called the Calgary Party. So a Better Calgary Party is the sun. Okay. It is the blue colors with the picture of the sun. That's us. And then the Calgary Party has like a pink arrow. And we are polar opposites in belief. Okay. So the pink
Really?
arrow is left of center. That is Brian Thiessen's gig. Okay. That's union money being supported. And it is a slate as well. So they have picked themselves and put themselves forward. Now, when we come over to the other one, Communities First is the one that you're talking about. That's Dan McLean and Sonia Sharp, Andre Chabot. So these are incumbents mostly. They have added one other person to their pocket in their slate there, but they're mostly incumbents. And I think what they're doing is they want to win again, right? They're already in. And so they're like, okay, we want to win again. And the province has come out with this party things. I mean, some of them have even gone online and said, Chabot said he doesn't believe in the party system, that they're a party because they have to be a party.
Mm.
Well, they're not really a party. The one that you're pointing at right now, this one here, this is the Calgary party,
Okay.
which
Yeah,
is,
this isn't the
yeah,
Calgary
this is
party.
the left one.
Okay.
And so what they're going to bring you is more of Gondek. They're going to
Right.
bring you more of what we already have. And if you love what we have, if the increase in taxes and the high cost of living is really turning you on, you should vote for them. They're the guys, okay?
Mm.
Now, if you're more kind of right of center and you believe in fiscal responsibility and you believe that, that somebody should be accountable for a budget and maybe someone should check on how things are being spent, just maybe, then you definitely want to be looking at, I mean, you're either looking at communities first or you're looking at a better Calgary party. My concern with this is we're going to split the vote.
Mm.
This is a bad, bad issue that we're
Yeah,
coming into
well,
right
that
now.
was unfortunate because we went to the launch of a Better Calgary party, and that was the first one. That was the first municipal Calgary party. And then
After 2 years
suddenly,
of working on it.
right, there was a lot of groundwork that people put into that. And then suddenly there was two other parties that came out, and the point of the ABC party was to unite people. I remember this is another question I was talking about. So you've been dividing the lines, between either little right of center, little left of center. And one of the things that the ABC party started with was trying to blur those boundaries, because some people say that using the terms conservative or liberal, it's very tribal and it's dividing. And so in the beginning that the ABC party seemed to be trying to remove those, and then more divisionatory parties came out. So that was a little bit confusing
Yeah, it
as
actually wasn't a good strategy. As we looked at this, we realized that conservatives do identify with other conservatives, right? And that those that the NDP and the Liberals, they tend to identify left of center, and that's okay. I mean, we're not against people having a choice. We just want you to know what your choice is, right? So yeah, we now call ourselves, we're a big tent. It's right and right of center. That doesn't mean that we strictly adhere to that, and every policy that comes out, we believe in a right of center approach, because it is like a thing one at a time, right? You got to look at like what is the circumstances around that, and sometimes the compassion piece has got to be taken into account, which is why we have that right in there in our principles,
yeah, you
right?
do. Between talking
Yeah.
about compassion and then environmental stewardship, even that people hear environmentalism and then the first thing they go to is, oh, you're a lefty. Well, it's like you've claimed, and we agree, as even conservatives provincially, whatever that term means on that level, we believe, and Kerry, as you said, in taking care of the environment, because that's what science beautifully has given us. Science has given us this technology to do a Zoom interview, and science has given us the technology to green deserts as they're doing in China. So it's a even saying environmentalism, it's
Calgary
not
is
as
full of
simple,
these beautiful green spaces. We got to keep
right?
them. We got to look after them. Like, and by the way, it was many, many years of conservative government that brought us all of that. So conservatives are not against looking after the environment. Okay.
Right,
We do
right.
feel it's got to be cared for. And there's another point there that within what you were saying, though, too, it's people are concerned that if we join the party, and this, I think this has had something to do with communities first popping up.
Mm.
They're worried that if they joined with us, they'd have to toe the party line.
Mm.
I hear this all the time. In fact, I was on a candidate's website not very long ago. He had said he was going to run for a Better Calgary party, and suddenly I've seen that he's aligning himself elsewhere. And right on his website, it said, I didn't want to go with the parties. I wanted to be independent because I don't want to toe the party line. So I want to
Mm.
address that because we don't have a party line.
Okay.
Okay. That's a ridiculous assumption. Our entire platform has been built to represent the people of Calgary so that the candidate who becomes a councillor or mayor can move with their heart and move with the people inside of their constituency. So we don't have a party line, and that's why you go to our website and you see principles and not policies. because we want you, the candidate, to come up with that. So if that's the thing that's keeping you from joining together, and being united, please stop right now. And I talk to the people on the street all the time, and they are begging us to get together with Communities First. They're begging us to get together with the other ones that are now talking about running independently. So I encourage people who are listening, contact them and tell them, please, I want to vote for you, but I want you to run with a Better Calgary party. I want to have a part in the democracy of this.
Mm, that's interesting. I never considered that, which makes sense because I'm also not for the less tribalism, the better, especially with the nice thing about the ABC party and even being involved in other politics, even just community groups, let alone not even politics, trying to bridge the gap between all the demographics and stuff like that, and yet still being able to stand on the principles. And that's one thing that people don't seem to understand. And this, my brother taught me a lot about because he's engaged being somebody who did a lot of different retail jobs and public service jobs. Um, People that define themselves as a liberal or a conservative who willingly put themselves in those boxes, they have this idea about what their own party line would be, what they would tote. And then when you have a conversation with them and you talk about things like family values, environmentalism, and then, freedom, stuff like that, and everybody agrees. So it's like those lines are not as defining as we like to originally construe them to be, which makes sense. So even you bringing that, and the first thing you say under policies is policies are determined by each candidate. So that's really down to the individual. That's solid.
That's like just for I guess our generation out there who's like listening. That's like when you're doing your freaking Harry Potter quiz and you're determining whether or not you're like Hufflepuff or Ravenclaw or Slytherin and all that. And it's just like you have a bit of all of them in you. It's kind of the same thing when it comes to politics. It's like there's some hints of ground between all of that you can actually find within yourself.
Yeah, and yet there are still principles that we most people can agree upon, the fundamentals. And that's the funny thing about principles is that the ABC party, when you looked at them, those are very basic, fundamental human principles, let alone ABC party principles, which why it makes sense to me that you don't have a party line because those are just principles that most people operate by, like treat your neighbor how you want to be treated type principles. And that's something everybody can follow, let alone it being a part of a party. Like if people got involved civically, even if the ABC party didn't work out, but people started meeting other people and getting involved and trying to recruit and get the signatures for the ABC party, becoming members, being on a ward association, meeting some of the candidates. Even if it all went down, you have so many more connections and then so many more values that you have built with one another. And I think that's the really cool thing about what this is fostering is that solid foundations from the beginning.
That's true. And the A Better Calgary party has been built to last. We're not going to disappear. The slates will disappear. They'll all be gone the day after the election. Some of them, some of the people will win, some of them will lose. Whatever happens, that entire thing is just going to crumble the day after. But A Better Calgary party is actually here for the long term. And win or lose, we're ready to go the next day. And we'll be working towards the next election because we are here to make a lasting difference in the lives of Calgarians. So why resist? Just get on board. Come on, let's have some fun together. I'm concerned that we'll split votes when there didn't need to be. We should just
Right.
get together and do it now instead of trying to pick up the pieces afterwards. It's been said to me, well, afterwards they'll have to unite. Why do we
Right.
have to wait for failure? Come on, let's
Right.
get together first and have a huge win together. Communities First and A Better Calgary party and any other independents that are out there working together, we could actually take 14 of the seats if we got together
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm,
And if we did 8, we could completely change the way
right.
politics is happening municipally in Calgary. But
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a really, really strong chance of having a large number by working together.
I love your confidence. You're like, screw the if bottom, worst comes to worst. We got this. That's a
Now,
good.
I mean, why are we waiting? I think another thing, a reason why Communities First is running these independents and other independents are running, they're afraid that they might not win in an election within a Better Calgary.
Hmm.
And that is also unfounded. You know, a Better Calgary party, we've got a few thousand people that have been coming together, but the incumbents, for example, already have a large sense of popularity. The chance that Dan McLean would lose against somebody in a Better Calgary party in that election is ridiculous. Of course, Dan would win. Dan's a great counselor. Andre Chabot would win. You know, they're good counselors. So they have nothing to fear by joining with a Better Calgary party, running first in the party, and then being represented and financially backed by the party going into the
Right.
election. It's how we get the big money. You know, and Dan McLean is a solid counselor. He does a really good job. He puts out a lot of stuff on media about what's really happening at City Hall. He is communicating with people in his ward, and of course, the whole city loves him, right?
Hmm.
And we get asked all the time, are we going to run someone against Dan McLean? Are we going to run someone against Under Chabot? Well, we're a Democratic Party, okay?
Right.
If we have a candidate that steps up in Ward 13, we have to
Right.
run him.
Yep.
Do we want to run somebody in Ward 13 at this moment? No. And I think the whole ward association is actually, trying to make room for Dan. But we have a position
Hmm.
right now that's a little bit, it's a little scary because what if Dan decides that he's going to run for mayor?
Right.
Because one of that group has got to run for mayor. And it's been suggested lately that they're going to have a poll to see if it's going to be Dan or if it's going to be Sonia Sharp.
Okay.
Well, Dan has a solid chance of winning as mayor. Honestly, Sharp doesn't really have the popularity to win as mayor. So Dan would be their better choice if they need a mayor candidate. But that means Ward 13 is suddenly empty. And now
Right.
what did we do here when we didn't have a candidate step up?
That's interesting. Well, I guess that's plays into the question I asked earlier, which was, are there enough candidates? And I mean, even with somebody like Dan McLean that clearly a lot of Calgarians seem to support, even having more candidates than less, especially if it's under this party line. I mean, because they get nominated first by the plebs and the members of the ABC party like us. It makes sense to have more people run and have somebody in there. I know people are worried about, Dan McLean versus that Ward 13 councillor that the ABC party could bring up. But in the end, clearly, if somebody steps up, it's because they believe that they could be doing more. And who are we to? Well, then it's up to judge us. Then we look and we go, yes or no, and then we vet them. So that comes back to the democratic process that you were talking about. Is that there shouldn't be a fear. This is the obligation. This is the responsibility of citizen participation, of democracy. We're supposed to participate. And if somebody steps up, it's because they believe that they need to be stepping up because there's a gap, there's some sort of filler. And if we disagree, then you have to get involved and say, no, you don't need to be running for this position. So, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because the more people that are involved, the more people who are showing their values, that's still overall a good thing as a society. So, on the macro, anyway, I know that it kind of goes against the precarious situation that you just painted about the Dan McLean versus Ward 13 different counselor. But if we have more people running, that should be a good thing on the whole.
Absolutely. And you know what? The scenario that I would love to see Communities First join with a Better Calgary party. If all of us got together and just worked it out, it would be amazing.
I appreciate that message that you're saying because I was personally very bothered when I heard, because being getting on the ground of the ABC party, and then really I really believe that in order to make change on any level, it needs to start with the individual. And so you go to the individual, try and change, as my family always says, go for your brain, change the way you think, start with that. And then you go to the family, try and make your family better. And once you're out of that, then you go to your local neighborhood. That's so local, work your way up rather than trying to go for federal politics, be like, we need a new prime minister, because that'll change it. Meanwhile, in Calgary, we can't even get a hold on our own councillors. So definitely, I loved the message that the ABC party was bringing, is trying to bring everybody together to really work on our own backyard. And so when I heard that Dan McLean was making his own party and not going with the ABC, I was personally very bothered. Even though Dan McLean, I've met the individual and I liked the individual, and I thought, why? And what you're saying right now, though, is because of all of the trepidations, the party line, and they didn't think that they would get voted under the ABC party. And you're saying it's bigger and it's unfounded, and it's bigger than that. There's so much more that can go behind you in the ABC party, and it's an unfounded fear. And I appreciate that. I think that message is important for people thinking about running, and the individuals like Dan McLean, because when you show that you're behind a democratic process, which clearly the ABC party is supporting, if you join the ABC party and put yourself up to be voted and vetted, nominated by the members of this party, you're showing you value the democratic process. So it actually does more for you if you were to participate in this party, because it's showing where your values are, and that's with the people, that bottom up rather than top down voting process. So I appreciate what you're emphasizing, Kerry, with that, because I think every candidate should know that going
I
into the
think that they'd
party.
all get what they want, actually.
Right?
I think they really would. And we would have all of the support would be going behind them, and it would be a win-win-win for everyone. So, and we'd love to have those conversations with them. We've had many of those conversations with them. I would encourage you, the people, start reaching out to all of these guys and saying, look, why don't you get together with a Better Calgary party? Come to the table, let's talk, because we'd love to support you, but we love what they're doing democratically. So let's do it together.
I didn't even think of that. We can do that too. Even why didn't I think of that all the time? How do we get involved? You could literally message the council and be like, "Hey, just so you know, a Better Calgary party, solid. You should go with them." That is something we can do. That, I guess, that's the next
send
question.
them this video.
We could send them this video, but that's the next question, is like, how do we support the a better Calgary party? One, you just said we can literally contact the councillors that we support and say, "Hey, if you want to run again, you should join with the ABC party, because they're a solid platform, and that's going to be people focused. You're going to win under that. You're going to have more funding." So we can do that. What else can we do to support the a better Calgary party and get involved?
Get involved. Yeah. How can people do
that? Absolutely. Well, you know what? There's a lot that we can do. I love that you ladies, reached out to me and said, "Hey, let's do something." More of that. We got more candidates that you guys could interview. That would be great. There are, other ways that people can get involved volunteer-wise. We actually have a group of people that we're putting together to help learn how to do things online. We call it the Keyboard Warriors. People can join in with that. We also need people to drive around, and we need people to knock on doors and make phone calls and send text messages and all kinds of other things. So there's always volunteering. That's very, very helpful. And of course, once we are past this through stage, right now we're still collecting 1,000 signatures, but once we're past that stage, there'll be other things like donations and stuff like that that could be done. But at the moment, we just really are looking for volunteers. We're looking for people who want to get involved, and and just talk to people. Talk to people on the street. I'm finding that the atmosphere right now for politics in the city is very, very charged. People are really interested. We're sometimes getting dwarfed by national or international headlines these days, but it still comes back to what is going on here in the city, and what can we control. I can't control what Trump is doing with tariffs, and I can't control the whether I love or hate Trudeau, or what's going on with politics federally. This is more grassroots. It's right here in our backyard, and we do have some control over what's happening in Calgary. We can get involved, and Alberta is a place of grassroots movements. So sometimes I meet people and they say, in fact, I've really noticed this with immigrant population, with people that are coming from other countries, or even second generation. They've got the idea that came from the original country. For example, I met a fellow from Russia who told me it's the way it is and nothing can be changed.
Right.
Why would you think that? Because you come from Russia, of course. Right? This is Canada. This is actually Alberta. Something can be changed. this is the land of grassroots politics making a difference. Okay, this province here is where the Reform Party became the Alliance Party, which became the Conservative Party of Canada, which has a very good possibility of becoming again the leading political party in Canada coming up in the next election. That was born here out of Alberta, and that's just one example. We've got many examples where grassroots politics changed the way things were right here in Alberta. So this is your opportunity to get involved and be part of the change and part of the solution instead of part of the problem. So come on, let's go. Join a Better Calgary Party. Go to the website and join the party today.
That was solid. And right now it is free, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
It is currently until the registration numbers are in, like the signatures that we need. So if you go today to a bettercalgaryparty.ca, you'll see the join button and it will be free. If you're watching this somewhere in the future, it may cost you a whopping $10 or something like that.
Yeah, I hope by the time people see this, we have all the signatures, and that way we can give
We can
them
charge the whopping $10.
yeah, that whopping $10. If people will pay it on the provincial level, they can pay it for their local city, Calgary.
Absolutely. And we're going to be making such a difference. And this is a place where you get to voice your concerns. I mean, when we get on the phone, we're asking people, what's important to you at City Hall? And we don't give them suggestions. We wait for them to tell us.
Mm.
That's what our candidates want to know. They want to know what is going to make a difference for the people of Calgary, and that's what we're here for.
Well, thank you so much. This was a very productive 45 minutes, however long that was. Thank you for all your suggestions and then some of the insights, because being we're a part of our ward association, but with a new party, and especially with some of the, as we are now learning, with all the corruption in our local Calgary city, even more than I realized, there's another organization that me and MayCee just learned about, where there are external initiatives that were intended to infiltrate the councils and municipals of Canadian cities. And I had no idea this was going on since before 2000. I was like, oh, okay. So it's not just the new phenomenon that our councillors and our mayors aren't listening to the actual citizens of the city. It's something that was intentional from back in the 90s. I was like, oh, okay. Learning new things every day. But so now understanding a little bit about how the party works and then how to get involved and then why we should get involved. This has been very, very nice. And even now, ideas like local podcasters interviewing the candidates. Because even though I am not technically a part of the upper, I'm not on VP comms, I'm not on VP membership of the ABC party, but as the ABC party advocates for civic engagement, I, as just a small local podcaster, like you said, Kerry, can interview the candidates, and then other Calgarians that can be a part of the nomination process, even though it's not official under the party, it is by the people, which is what the party promotes. So that's a really good idea, and me and MayCee will definitely consider that in the future. Because we
Yeah,
even
you got a
know
great candidate up there in Ward 14.
we do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Keener Hatchie is preparing for the nomination race, and he has been out knocking on doors for 6 months already. And as the recording of this, as we're doing this at the beginning of February, he's been at this a long time. He has a huge heart for the people. That's just one really great example of an amazing candidate that's willing to give his all for the city of Calgary.
Yeah, and we'll probably, if he's willing, we'll have him on, because he holds a good place in our family's heart, as he's involved in everything he can be involved in. So kudos to him. But thank you, Kerry. This was really good. I will put all the links in the description, and I will show people where to go and how to support. I appreciate your time. This is short notice, but you were right on it. No coffee in you, but you came on and you marched with us.
I'm going to go get a coffee right now.
Perfect. Well then, thank you. Have a good rest of your day, Kerry. Thank you.
All right.